Okay, whew. So this guy, this Prelude, is far and away the hardest sustained level of difficulty in the piece. The first time I actually played Dancing Day, I got asked by a choir. They were both performing and recording Dancing Day and Ceremony of Carols, and they got in touch with me, I don't know, 6 weeks before the first rehearsal, and I never played Dancing Day before. I never looked at it at all. So I got the music and I said, sure, I can do it, but I'm not going to play the Prelude. And so my first, I don't know if I would call it a suggestion, but my first thought for you is that with this piece, there's enough other hard stuff happening here that, especially if you're constrained by time in terms of learning it for the first time, feel free to just leave that Prelude out. It works quite nicely. You can just start it. Or if you want to go back a little bit further, you could start at this last tempo one. Etc. And it's going to be fine. I mean, that sounds fine. So that's a possibility, because it's quite hard. And one of the annoying things about it is that it doesn't sound as hard as it is, and also it starts with these sixes, right? This. And I like to think I'm quite good at this sort of. There's what is that? Boxa etude. Left hand's wandering around there somewhere, but you know, when I'm practicing that, I feel I'm fairly good. There's of course also the Godefroy dance of the sylphs, which has, what is it? That's even throwing in a little grace note in there. But this particular grouping of sixes is annoying partly because of the way it's written. And two aspects to that. One is that the beat is on two. It's not on the thumb and the fourth fingers. So instead of hearing, you know, we start here. And that brings out the fact that it's a lot easier to sort of things are maybe getting a little bit lost in the middle there, but that's more acceptable because we hear that beat, and it's harder to hear that something in here is getting maybe a little weaker or not quite as even. But when we're starting, that just makes it a little harder. And the other difficult aspect about this is the spacing. It's a lot easier when you've got something nice like this. But here we've got, to begin with, this 3-4-3 is difficult. So what can you do? Well, one option, of course, is to try to do the whole thing with two hands. So you might have, you know, if we got here. I don't know how possible that is. For me, because I can do it with one hand, with the right hand just playing as it's written, it's a lot easier to read. it seems to require less work, even though that initial investment might pay off of figuring out how to do it with two hands. So I've been lazy in that way, and I've just played the right hand as written. But if you're having a lot of trouble with that, it's definitely would be worthwhile to try to figure out whether you can do it. Now, of course, you notice there when you have these when you have the non-harmonics, that's quite easy because you can be playing them with 4. When you have the harmonics, it's a little more difficult because you have a longer range to jump up with the left hand. So anyway, I offer that up to you as something to look at if you're having a lot of trouble with this. Now the other thing is that we can play around with what strings we're actually playing, and originally from my teacher I had the D sharp and the G sharp. No, just the D sharp. I had the D sharp, so that whoa, to create some different spacing. And then I realized this year, I performed it this year, just performed it on Sunday, wonderful performance, and had a great time. It's a glorious piece to play. And I realized that, hey, wait a minute, I can take that B flat as an A sharp. So now it's a much easier spacing, and later on, I can take this A flat as a G sharp. So now here we have, is that right? So just some easier spacing. So that's exciting. That definitely makes it easier. And it works out quite nicely. And again, some of these enharmonics just make life easier in various places. What else? Well, with this little section, you can practice it as 1 and 2 and 3 and. As 1, 2, 3. You can do it as 5, so every finger is getting a chance to be the downbeat. Just play around with playing it slowly, making sure each finger is as strong as the other, and just putting in a lot of practice. So that's all I have to offer on that little section, this little passage pattern that we get throughout the piece. And what else? So that we go along, and then we get into this, which definitely comes as a relief. Oh, just before that, I do actually take 2 hands in this last bar. It just makes life a little bit easier and kind of makes me wish I could do 2 hands the whole way through. So maybe next year I'll look at that. We got this little section. When we get here, when we get here, I end up taking the when we get here, I end up taking the left hand. The left hand takes the right hand's part, and the right hand takes the left hand's part, just because this is the more difficult section. And safer to do that on the right hand. Once we get here, I start taking the downbeat with the left hand. So that just gives the right hand a little bit of a break and works out quite nicely.